This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, everybody? Ricky Widmer here, along with the Mark Weber, dubbed MEs. And if you're wondering, hey, Ricky, you just messed up the intro, it's a throwback to the onside kick this week where I messed up and I thought it was the Primetime Podcast. But welcome to the Primetime Podcast. I'm here with the one, the only, Brandon Swanson.
Hey.
Had to do it right. Had to set up my partner the right way, even though I tried to make it funny before the podcast. And if you're wondering, go check out the onside kick, the beginning of it. You'll get a good laugh here on the YouTube page. But thank you guys for checking out this edition of the Primetime Podcast. And Brandon, we're chugging right along. We are finishing the SEC today, looking at the SEC East. We're going to look at every single team, all 7 of them, give them their own little bit of face time, their own glory, before we move on to our next conference, which I believe is the Big Ten, is where we're going to next week. But we're going to get right into it. Let's start. The first team we got on the docket, the Mizzou Tigers, the Missouri Tigers. And they are a team that improved, offense is the key to this team for me because they improved their points per game last year by nearly 18 points per game. They have their quarterback coming back. They have offensive weapons in the receiving game coming back. They have their running back coming back. Really, to me, the big thing for this team, the most important thing, consistency on the offense and just improving on those offensive numbers more so than they did in 2016.
Well, Ricky, you take a look at this team in the Missouri Tigers, and overall last year they went 4-8 and 2-6 in the conference, and it wasn't good. You know, it was not good at all for them, but I think that when you take a look, if you're just looking on the surface and you're just looking at it as, you see that this team, you gave some numbers there of what they've got coming back. You go, this team has to be better than 4-8. Mm-hmm. There's no chance that they're going to be 4-8 or worse. And I'm one of those people that says absolutely not, because you dive in a little bit more and you start to see that this team is actually progressing quite nicely. So one of the first things is they went from 124th in offense, what they were 2 years ago, to 13th this past year. You said that they increased their overall points per game to 13th this past season. That's really impressive. Drew Lock coming off a pretty big season, over 3,300 yards, I believe, 23 touchdowns. He had a nice year.
Only 10 INTs.
10 INTs, but inconsistency. Inconsistency in some games. He would have some really, really good games, and then there'd just be some duds. You want to be able to string those good ones together. You get your top 4 wide receiver options back. That's huge. I think when you're able to get 2 wide receivers or more back, that's such a big plus. When you can keep that core intact from the year before and be able to build on that last season, that's going to have you a lot of times leaps and bounds in front of a number of teams who, unfortunately for them, lost a ton of guys and can't bring and aren't bringing back as many people as you are. Demaria Crockett, I hope I'm saying the first name right, he comes back after a over 1,000 yard season, and their offensive line is all back. The entire offensive line is back that only allowed 14 sacks last season, and their running backs averaged 5 yards per carry. When you look at that and everything there, the quarterback, the wide receivers, the running back position, and the offensive line, those guys are all still intact. For someone to say that Mizzou is not going to win at least 6 games, I'd say you're crazy. Then you're doing something. Then there's something wrong with the coaching. If you can't win 6 games with this core group that you still have on offense. Now I know we haven't looked at defense yet, but you have to bring them up. You have to offensively at least be excited and say, you know what? Defense, we still got to look at them, but offensively, this team can do it. Well, this team can get you 6, even 7 wins.
Here's the thing, and I'm not going to blame the coaching. Last year, the big hole on this team, the thing that cratered, that was the weakest, you are as strong as your weakest link, and that weakest link was defense. I'm gonna put this in perspective for you. Like how good the offense was in 2015. Mizzou scored a combined 49 points. Last year, they scored 45 points against Mid-Tennessee alone. Guess what? They lost that game against Mid-Tennessee State. They scored 37 against Tennessee and still lost by 26 points in that game. There were numerous times last year where, the West Virginia game, that was on the offense. You only scored 11 points, but, Georgia was close. LSU, you let them score 42. Florida, you let them score 40. Mid-Tennessee, like I said, 51 points. 35 getting up against Kentucky. 31 against South Carolina. And 63 points against Tennessee. Those were your losses. And to quote John Madden, whoever scores more points is going to win the football game. Boom. That's how it works. And that's what it's going to come down to for the Mizzou Tigers this year. Because I look at their schedule, and they play teams that most of them are exactly the same. Georgia's getting better. Florida's going to be there again. Tennessee, we're going to see how they are this year because they have some big losses that we're going to get to. But then you have guys like, I know you beat Arkansas last year. You got them on the road again to end the season. But you got to play guys like Auburn this year. You got to play a big offense and a scoring offense in Auburn. You got to play a team in Purdue that is going to be looking to improve themselves. This team, I look at the schedule, and unless the defense picks it up, I see only 2, maybe 3 wins, 4 if you're lucky. Like the only wins that I see for sure are Idaho and Mizzou, or Mizzou State to start the season. The only other ones I could see them maybe getting on top of that are Purdue and UConn. However, if the defense steps up and lowers that points given up, they will be in a lot of the other conference games because some of the ones they won were really close. However, you look at the Georgia game, you go, Ricky, they only lost by 1. One bounce, the ball bounces a different way. We win that game. Yes, I know, but the majority of your team last year, your defense didn't help out your offense, and that needs to change in 2017.
Well, I think one of the interesting things that I'm looking at, I know you're looking at the defense and
which
saying,
is weird. I'm usually looking at the offense,
and I think that you obviously have a solid point. They need to be a lot better. It's it wasn't good. It wasn't good, but you have to look at the 2 big games that I would look at, both on the road, tough, at LSU, at Florida. They scored 7 points against LSU. They could only put up 7. Mm-hmm. They only were able to put up 14 against Florida. Now, you're usually not going to win when you only put up 7 or 14 points.
Unless it's like a 10-7 Alabama win over LSU.
But you're usually not going to see that. Mm-hmm. You're usually, and especially in a game like that, most likely, you're usually going to see higher scoring, at least into the 20s.
Yeah.
So if you're only able to put up that many points, that's, yes, defensively, to allow 42 and 40 points, respectively, against LSU and Florida, you're already kind of SOL. But only to be able to get 7 points and 21 points combined between those 2 games, you can't expect a whole lot. That's when the consistency comes in. I think that you score 79 points against Delaware State, and that's really, it's tough because then the next game you go into LSU and you're like, oh my gosh, we were only able to put up 7. Yeah, well, you played Delaware State the game before, but you're not able to take anything from that game and transfer it to the next game. We've talked to a lot of coaches, Ricky, in our day that say, momentum doesn't necessarily carry game to game. It doesn't necessarily carry.
It can, but
it doesn't necessarily mean that it will. And I think that this is one of those situations where you get a big win. I don't care if it's against Delaware State or Cupcake County. You need to be able to take that win.
Is Cupcake County a D1 team?
D2.
Oh, D2.
Small D2.
Okay.
But I think that you need to be able to take that and drive that throughout the week whether it's the coaching staff, the players themselves, the leaders of the team, captains, be able to say, hey, we got a big one coming up. We may have been able to beat these guys and do it and look real good doing it, but we have a big game coming. And they just need to be all mentally prepared. I think that's one of the biggest things is the mental prep. You're what you're doing. You're the starter. You've got a spot in college. You're playing at a big school in the SEC. You know what you're doing. You've got to be mentally prepared and ready for what they're going to throw at you. Because these teams, they're just better. They have better talent. And you know that a lot of times going in. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be the better team that day. You need to come out and beat them that day. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, is if LSU ends up being, or Florida, whoever, ends up being, in the top 10, and you don't end up there, it doesn't matter. If you beat them that day, you got that win. No one's taking that from you. Mm-hmm. So I think that they need more of that. They need more of that style, more of the grinder mentality mentally. And I think that that's a really big thing. And defensively, I think that will really help defensively. What's also going to help defensively is if they're able to get more pressure on the quarterback. And secondary, I think, is going to be a big bright spot for them. But up front is going to have some questions.
Let's put it this way. I just did the math from last season. If you take away the Eastern Michigan game and the Delaware State game, their points per game is at 22.8. You add back in that 79 and that 61, it jumps almost 8 full points. It puts them back up to 30.6 repeating. So if you round up 30.7 points per game, you got an 8-point spread on your average just in those 2 games alone. That means if you didn't have those 2 games, that 18 points per game I mentioned at the beginning? Yeah, that's only 10 if you look at the other games that you didn't score 79 and 61 in. And I think it's kind of, we've mentioned good things. The offense, the consistency there. Obviously, you don't want to see the drop-ups of like, okay, we scored 61, then we scored 79, then we scored 7. We scored 45 against Mid-Tennessee, then we dropped back down to 21-21 and then 17 in that game against, or 26 in that game against Vanderbilt. We need to see the offense play a lot better, but really to me, the biggest weak link on this team is going to be defense. And it's what are you going to do against offenses? Because, I just look at the ones on your schedule. Jarrett Stidham's going to be tough. Florida just got a new weapon that they can use in Malik Zaire. Tennessee, they're going to be a toss-up. But then I look at Georgia. Do you see Jacob Eason over 4th of July weekend slinging that ball over the lake? He's going to be slinging it on a football field.
I did not, but I honestly, Ricky, I don't really want to focus as much on them stopping the quarterback. They need to focus on stopping the running back. They allowed
all
20.
I'm looking at is limit those points.
Listen. This is where the points are going, though. They allowed 20 touchdown runs last season. Mm-hmm. And they allowed their opposing running backs to get 5 yards per carry. They ranked 118th in total defense. They need to stop the run. Yes, they need to stop the pass. I mean, that's always usually a given. Mm-hmm. But you need to be able to stop that running game. And if they can do that, if you even limit it down to from 28 to, let's say, 18, you've gotten better. Mm-hmm. But they need to be able to bring a good pass rush. They need to have a strong front seven. They need to be able to do that. And if they can do that and they can get into those backfields, they can get some tackles for a loss. That's what they need to be looking for. I think that, obviously you always want to stop the quarterback, mm-hmm. especially those quarterbacks who can run. Malik Zaire, we assume that he'll be the starter. There, we'll get to it. But I think that I just really think stopping the run is going to be the number one. Stopping the run for this team is going to be number one. For other teams, mm-hmm. But obviously you want to stop everything,
Yeah.
but you want to have more of a focus on being able to stop the run because of how bad you were against it last year.
And you know what? If stopping the run, the way I'm looking at it is if stopping the run gets you to have your opponents put up less points, then that's good for me. Because that, to me, is the focus. Yeah, I look at the quarterbacks because those teams are going to have great leaders on the field for them. When you have a quarterback that knows what he's doing, you have that leader on the field, it'll set up everyone else. It'll give them confidence. I think that the games that are going to be the most important for them, Arkansas, you beat them last year. Can you beat them this year? Vanderbilt, those are two that, yeah, they were at home for you. Now they're on the road. It's going to be a different game on the road. Kentucky, another road game. And then South Carolina, that one's at home. Second game of the season. If they can win the majority of those games that were teams who were bottom feeders along with them in this division, because you look at the records, I'm looking just at conference records, Vanderbilt was only a game better than you, and you actually had almost 20 more points per game than them, or 10 total points, I should say, 20 total points than them in the conference. However, you gave up nearly 120 more points than them last season. South Carolina, another team that was only one win ahead of you, and then Kentucky was 2 wins ahead. So you were right there. It's not like you were completely out of it, but I think if they can swing some of those games, Kentucky, South Carolina, Vanderbilt, and just keep the offense consistent, get a little bit better there, the defense is the one that we need to see major strides in the defense like we saw in the offense last year. What the offense saw from 2015 to 16, we need to see that kind of improvement in the defense from 16 to this year.
Ricky, I'm looking at the schedule for this next year, 2017. I'll tell you, I'll go through the ones I think that they're going to get wins. They get wins against the first 3 teams. They're 3-0 to start the season. They beat Missouri State, South Carolina, Purdue. So you already start off 3 wins. I don't think you get Auburn. Kentucky, I think they beat them. So you got 4. Idaho, I think they beat them. 5. UConn, beat them. 6. And then I think you got a chance to beat Vanderbilt. There's 7. And if they threw in any other wins, I mean, that's just, little extra whipped cream on the ice cream sundae. Now, those are the ones I think that they can win. I think that those are all definitely winnable games. Easy, no. Winnable, yes. And there is certainly a difference between those two terms. I think that the game against Kentucky on the road will be an interesting one.
Mainly because it's on the road.
On the road at Vanderbilt will be an interesting one. I think even at home versus South Carolina will be a challenge, will be a test. But I think that I'm really intrigued by this offense. I'm intrigued by this offense, and not to say that it can, overcompensate so much for the defense that may be still trying to get their feet underneath them after losing some of their top pass rushers from last year. But I think that this team is better than a 4-8 team, and this is a big year for Mizzou. I think that if they are able to make some strides in this season and then carry that forward to next year, that could be really big. But if they really stumble this year, it's going to be a big blow for them.
Well, and we're going to actually move on. We got to move on to the other teams. This is where you guys come in. Mizzou fans, let us know down below in the comment section. What are you excited for this year? What improvements exactly do you want to see from your team in 2017? Then how do you see this season playing out for you guys? Let us know down below in the comment section.